Hey, what is up? What is up, YouTube family? It is IK right here. Um, yeah, let's get right into it. I have another video for y'all today. And yeah, I wanted to give my whole take on some political videos for y'all today. I don't normally always post like that, but I just always like to kind of give like my take on certain stuff and just give you my 2 cents on like what's going on in the modern world. So yeah, be sure to like this video, share this video around, and let's get this conversation started. So, all right, yeah, I'm going to give you my whole take on what's going on with well, like personally with me, like I'll probably just maybe start with one video, that being the the ICE deportations with Donald Trump's administration, and I'll give you my whole take on that for this video, and then I'll split that into a different video to talk about the whatchamacallit, the I guess like the Marshall, well no, like it's basically like the Donald Trump's executive order to bring in the U.S. National Guard to DC and to Chicago. So I'm gonna give you like my take on that in a different video. So yeah, I'll probably just have this done within like the same, well, two different videos. So yeah, be sure to subscribe to Marshall No Commentary, playing some YouTube content out of him. So wanted to give credit out to him. Definitely go check him out. He's a fun YouTuber. I like watching him a lot, and he's pretty cool. So yeah, that's pretty much what I have to say. Well, like now that I said that, yeah, let's get right into the video. So yeah, so I'm gonna give you like my whole take on what's going on with the ICE deportations and what's my pure thoughts on this. Again, this is like my own political take on this, philosophically. And for those of you that may not know, I'm a very anti-state, anti-government, anarcho-capitalist type libertarian. So, based off of what I will say, based off of what I believe in, is just how I see things. So, like, if anybody disagrees, I mean, that's just what I believe in. So it's not like I'm really trying to make people be convinced with like what I have to say, but it's more like this is just how I believe as a like as a anarchist per se, and what I truly believe in as far as just how I see things. So yeah, let's get right into it. So basically, what's been happening with the ICE deportations, for those of you that already know, is that the immigrants that are being quote unquote taken out, these are immigrants that ICE has claimed to say that, well, I mean, according to Donald Trump and his administration, as far as people that are working behind closed doors and people that are working within ICE, especially the ICE director. I forgot what that white girl lady's name. If you guys know who I'm talking about, like, she's basically like one of what the ICE, directors for, what the immigration, control per se, which, they've been claiming to say that ICE has been going after, a lot of criminals and people that have committed crimes. And, for the most part, I can definitely agree with that, because the thing about ICE is that what people don't know, what ICE is really doing, is that their protocol is to go after criminals for the most part that have. Oh, wait, hold on. Let me pause. All right, I'm back. Yeah, so back to what I was saying. ICE's motivation is to go after people with criminal records, and going after immigrants that are quote unquote violating, the U.S. immigration code, as far as making sure that you have your papers and you are abiding to the visa rules. As far as like when you come over to the U.S., you have to follow the rules in terms of, not having to overstay. And I get that, like, for the most part, most people should be following those rules. But the thing is like, when you're thinking about it, like, from state to state, especially from like Democratic led states and Republican led states, a lot of immigrants are trying to find those little tiny cracks where they can, like, where they can come into the US. And then let's just say if they have like a friend or family member that they know, where they can just come in and just basically take advantage of, of having to be in the US, then then they're going to do it, because it's like they don't want to go back to their own country for the most part. This is like for people that want to illegally come in and actually have, basically have like the freedom to just kind of like, live, live off of someone else that can give them that type of housing, where they're just able to be like, okay, I got like my little buddies that I know, where, I'm from, Mexico, or at least like Nicaragua, or any other part of the world, where if you know somebody that's going to, like, house you into like the US, at least you at least have those connections where you can illegally come in. And then, all you do is basically lay low, so you can, like, quote unquote, try to find a job that can, quote unquote, pay you, because you are a, how should I say, you're illegal, and you're trying to find work, but you have no papers, you have nothing coming into the US. So therefore you're trying to go through the basically the illegal way, and, like, in order to not go through like the process of getting processed in the US and actually working your way to citizenship. Because, like, the thing is that, for one, it's really expensive coming over to the US. For those of you that don't know, getting a US visa is very expensive. For those of you that may not know how much it costs, getting a visa is at least $435 just to start, but those costs can also increase higher depending on how long your stay will be. And if you have like a certain type of visa that you're trying to go for, let's just say it's like a professional work visa. Like, let's just say you're trying to go in for civil engineering work into like the US, and you have like a certain type of visa that you're trying to like apply for, that's going to be a lot more costly and a lot more expensive to get that done. The problem with that is that you have to basically wait for, a possible opportunity to even be granted the visa, and there's no guarantee that your visa is going to give you, enough time to kind of stay in the US, where you would have to like renew like your visa every like couple, I want to say every couple so years. I mean, every visa is different, but just to kind of like make things simplistic, if you go for like a standard visa, which is like it's usually like the immigrant H1, HB, HB, like HBC1 visa. I forgot what it's called, but that visa like runs up for at least $435. But then once you get it, that visa gives you the ability to come to the US to travel, and that will give you the ability to use that visa for at least 10 years for you to go over to the US. And then on top of that, you have to also like work like a job as well, because the thing is that when you come over to the US and you have that visa, you have to also like present that with a, oh, I'm sorry, you have to present that with a employer, where that employer has to put you on file in order for you to be registered as a quote unquote green card immigrant. So that's really like the bigger problem, because a lot of people that don't realize that is that, especially like Americans, is that it's very expensive to even get, like the visa to begin with. And then once you get it, you have to also go by like the protocol of like how long like your visa will last, and also how much money that you have to put in for that visa. Because like, what if you have to pay extra fees, for the visa, and what if like your visa doesn't really give you, all the opportunities to kind of grow into bigger jobs. So, oh wait, hold on. Yeah, so Yeah, sorry about that. Like I had to have that ad get skipped. Yeah, so basically like, a lot of like Americans that don't see that, they kind of just think like, oh, well, that the visa, it's not that difficult to get. And then some people may think like, well, having to spend like 400 something odd dollars along with all the extra fees, well, that just comes with being, like a typical standard, like, immigrant. So that's on them if they, like, like if those immigrants can't really like afford it. And the truth is that most of them can't, because if you want to know why, America has a far greater GDP than most nations around the world, including Western Europe and parts of Europe as well. And the thing is that for any immigrant that comes from like the third world, at least, they don't really produce that type of money for them to get that income together, so they can actually bring their money to the U.S. and then at least pay that visa off, so they can at least get the process going to actually like get their citizenship, put together. And I mean, it's really terrible because it's like, you have people that come from really messed up countries. And I'll actually kind of, explain like a few examples. Like, I have some friends from Africa that have like went through really poor situations where, they had nothing coming to the US, but as soon as they were able to kind of get that money together to go get like the US visa, they had to go straight to work and find themselves, like a good stable job. But the problem is that a lot of immigrants can't speak English. And the thing is that, like, I'll kind of make this, like, I should say, I'll make this very simplistic. Let's just say if you're some Colombian girl and you speak Spanish, and you're obviously like the type where you don't choose to speak English when you come over to the US because you really want to go over to the US and actually expand your life and live, a much better life than having to live in Colombia. But when you go over to the US and you're trying to look for a job, and let's just say like that you like that you already have like your family together, like your family has a place for you to stay. But the issue is that you're not able to kind of get that money together where you're trying to get like your life on the right track, where you're able to kind of like prioritize your your living expenses. But on top of that, you also have to put money down for the visa as well, because the visa is going to be charging you fees. So it's like you have to like make sure that that visa is being being up to date, so therefore you're not having to have anything past due that's going to how should I say, that's going to hurt you financially long term. Because that's pretty much what the problem, like why a lot of immigrants that are coming over with that visa, they have to also like deal with like the fact that most of them choose not to learn or even speak English. And the issue is that if they don't know how to find any particular job that can pay them well, so they can at least like build their career and actually kind of get their income up to kind of work their way up into like a higher level, then what ends up happening is that they end up staying at jobs that are going to pay them low money, and then they can barely even like afford having to renew like their visa once it's time to kind of like get everything ready to move into that next phase of trying to become a citizen. So on top of that, once you do work your way into becoming a citizen, what you have to do is that you also have to pay a lot of expenses, coming over to the US, where, you have to like get yourself registered for Social Security. You also have to get yourself, oh wait, hold on. Let me pause. All right, I'm back. So, yeah, basically, you have to pay a lot of expenses coming over to the US. That being, you have to pay for Social Security, you have to pay for a lot of taxes for welfare and all this crazy nonsense. Depending on what state that you go to, it's different, because it's like, still, that the protocol still remains that when you're paying money for working your way into the citizenship, this money for the taxes that are having to be filed, as a quote unquote immigrant, you're still having to kind of like meet that obligation where you still have to like give those taxes out to the government, and for that money for what's having to be deducted up against you, because it's like you're not a US citizen, so it's like for you to kind of like have that money being like lesser granted to you, that's also like a bigger problem, because there's really no proper guarantee of like where the future can go for you, so you have to like kind of finance things a lot more effectively, and you can't put yourself in a position where if you don't have that money saved up by time when you're ready to become a citizen, which in certain cases, it like having to wait for your citizenship is technically the hard part, because altogether for you to kind of have like your money together to be paid out for your US citizenship, um you have to save up to at least $7,500, so you can, one, have your social security set up, your Medicaid, like everything that is to be naturalized for a U.S. Citizen, that is being factored into all the social services that are being put onto that next, citizen that is being naturalized into the U.S. So the problem is that you have to, pay that money for all those, expenses, and once you do that, you're also having to pay for your living expenses as well, because like, especially for the immigrants that don't have family members and they kind of come over to the US with very little money, and they're kind of like basically living off of scraps, so it's like, there's really no guarantee where their life could go, because they're living in a very expensive, part of, the country. Like, let's just say they're in New York City and they're really trying to make it by so they can try to get their citizenship. But the problem is that, one, they live in a very expensive area, and two, they don't have many opportunities. So it's like, one, they don't understand English, and two, they're having to they're having to struggle to actually find a job that can actually take them in. So it's like them finding themselves like a stable job is basically out the picture. So for the most part, a lot of immigrants don't even choose to speak English to actually get those higher level jobs. So it's like, it's already difficult for them, because it's like they're already creating themselves like a massive trap where if you don't learn how to speak English coming over to the US, and you don't have that proper incentive of actually having to, assimilate to American culture, then that's going to screw you over by time when you're trying to have your career to be set and you're trying to go to a certain direction where you want to be successful. And the problem is that you're putting yourself in a much greater danger, because one, if you're trying to build a family and you're trying to expand like your bloodline here, you need to have some sort of proper means to speak English, because all the high paying jobs are not going to, you know, tell you, hey, you could just speak Spanish and just get paid like 70 to $80,000 per, like a per year for your salary, and then that's just going to like make you nice and dandy to be well put off. Like, that's not going to happen like that. So the thing is that you have to like prioritize yourself to be educated in the US, which I understand. Like, not a lot of immigrants are very, are very educated. A lot of them come from really messed up backgrounds. But the thing is that have a if you have an interest of wanting to come to the US, you have to learn how to speak English. Like, that's just part of the cultural norm. But for the most part, that's how most Americans prefer to live, because it's like that's how most, societies are built in the US. Granted, there are some places in the US where people do speak Spanish, but at a degree of where, let's just say if I go out to California, yes, I understand that California has like a strong Mexican population, and many other Hispanics do quote unquote live out there, like Guatemalans, possibly Nicaraguans, Panamanians. Like, who knows? It doesn't matter to me, but it's like I'm not going to be applying for a job for the most part in California if I were to be given a great opportunity where, let's just say, the company says like, oh well, this company does have, a certain means for people to speak Spanish on the job, but it's not really necessary. But for the most part, oh, like, excuse me, um, a business is not going to, how should I say, tell me that I have to speak Spanish in order to get this particular, like, in a particular position. For the most part, most high paying jobs, or most high paying, businesses that offer positions at any given job, depending on what you want to do. Hold on, let me pause this. All right, I'm back. Yeah, back to what I was saying. Most businesses do not offer jobs in America for you to, how should I say, they don't offer positions for you to speak Spanish, and if you don't speak it, then you're not going to get the job. And I think like the stupid thing behind it is that a lot of companies that are even wanting you to do that are simply just appeasing to people that can't speak English. So therefore, if you speak Spanish, that'll just be beneficial for the company in terms of having a communication support for those that do speak Spanish, for people that are customers to a particular business, as far as like handling clients. But it's like, the thing is that for the most part, most high paying American jobs don't even ask you, well, as far as companies go, they don't require you to speak Spanish, because Spanish is not really a massive language that people claim it to be, in terms of, having it be spoken within a competitive job market. So for the most part, you don't how should I say, you don't see companies like Pepsi, Apple, um, let's just say Walmart, all these companies saying like, oh, you have to speak Spanish if you want to work here. No, like, so many people, we get pissed off and so mad to the point where they'd be like, bro, I'm not gonna be working for you. That's gonna lose you money. If you're gonna make people speak another language, no. Oh crap, I'm so sorry. Yeah, so for the most part, people that are Americans, in the U.S., don't have to think about speaking another language, because it's well normalized within American culture to speak English. So the immigrants that have a tough time wanting to adapt, or even not even wanting to speak English at all, those people are putting themselves in a much grave danger, because they're not going to get higher level jobs down the road, where their opportunities are going to be cut in half, and then their financial growth is going to be a lot slower, because they are unskilled workers. So, for the most part, when it comes to ICE deportations, I understand like why a lot of immigrants are being deported, because for the most part, a lot of these people come from really poor backgrounds where, for one, most immigrants do not want to go through the process legally of trying to come to the US, because it's really expensive to go out of like their way to afford everything in the US. So if they can go in illegally, which most of them do, because they're most likely being brought in by cartels, or maybe in certain cases they're probably going through underground tunnelway systems, where they're having to enter into the US illegally, where they can anonymously make it to the US, whether it's maybe by shore, especially where like, you kind of see that happening down in Florida, especially with sadly, a lot of immigrants that come from Cuba. And I've heard about like the crazy stories of like the Haitian immigrants, where the Florida government, they've been going down after them pretty violently. So those people are being prosecuted, and they're being violently kicked out. So it's like ICE is loading guns, right to their faces, to tell them that they gotta go. So it's like, like for the most part, a lot of these immigrants are self deporting, and they are having to leave because they know what the consequences will be if they choose to be ignorant and not want to go through the legal process to go like to enter into like the U.S. because the legal implications of like what will happen. Oh, like I'm sorry, of what will happen is that if you do try to stay in the U.S. illegally, you will be met with fines. You'll also be brought to a federal court judge where you'll be most likely prosecuted. Where it's basically like more likely it's gonna be some sort of misdemeanor. I don't think it's gonna be more of like a felony, but I mean more so if you're like coming in illegally and you have like a messed up record with your criminal record, you're most likely going to be charged with a felony and you're never going to come back to the US because you have a criminal record. So if you're a convicted felon and let's just say you're on the run for, let's just say, armed robbery and murder and all this other crazy nonsense, you're not coming back to the US because one, you have a criminal active pending record, so it's like you have to go back to jail and you most likely, oh, hold on, let me pause. All right, I'm back. So yeah, back to what I was saying. If you have a active criminal record in the US, as a a legal immigrant, for the most part you are most likely going to be expedited or basically extradited, and to also have you know felonies being pushed upon you because you are a convicted felon in the US, and you have no business coming over because you're a wanted criminal. So for the most part, a lot of these immigrants that are criminals coming over to the US, they're trying to take advantage of coming in illegally, where if they know somebody that can hook them up to come over to the US, and they can kind of do whatever they want to do until they actually commit a crime, and then they're going to get met with like most likely federal charges, and then they're going to go back to maybe, well, I don't even know like what most immigrants get deported back to, whether if ICE is kind of capturing them and then they're like, okay, we're going to just send you back to your country. But I'm pretty sure for the most part, if they're criminals, they're not going back to their own country. They're gonna get sent to a different country, and then they're gonna be figuring everything out from there, where they're gonna probably get met with criminal prosecution for their crimes. So I can kind of see something like that, where if what the U.S. government, if they're having to like send people over to different countries, if they're messed up criminals, and then if they meet their fate at a different country where they end up, having to be, executed for their crimes or something like that. I can see something happen like that. But for, let's just say, for the immigrants that are just coming in peacefully and they really want to, make a huge difference by coming over to the US and wanting to, have their citizenship, and these are hardworking people, and let's just say ISIS having to capture them and send them back, which I get it, like it's messed up, and personally with me, I don't like it either, but I'm going to just say for the benefit of the doubt, if they're give like if ICE is giving you the opportunity to go back home and you can come back to the US when you have everything put together with like your papers and all that, then I can see the like the justification for ICE, where people say like you should not be coming over to the US if you are not coming over with papers, and then on top of that, you also need to get processed, as a quote unquote immigrant, especially with like your green card visa. So therefore everything can be, good to go. The problem is like most of them, like I stated, is that they cannot afford getting that visa, because that visa to them is far more expensive than anything else that they can think of. So they have to go out of they have to go out of their way, making a massive risk of coming over to the US, and then if they have family members that can help them along the way to kind of bring them over here, they could very well do that, for the time being. But it's like, let's just say if they're choosing not to like assimilate and they're choosing not to find work, they're kind of just living off of somebody else's dime, where they're kind of, just kind of like doing stupid stuff out of their own way to commit crimes, then yeah, then that's where the problem basically remains. And I can see why ICE goes after those people. But for the most part, ICE is pretty much going after a lot of criminals that are felons. And I mean, like, like it has been documented that ICE has been going after a lot of criminals, especially with people with, dangerous, level felony charges. So it's like I can see why ICE is being hard on a lot of people, because they're not too sure like why these people are being given a pass coming over to the US. Especially like immigrants that are coming over to the US and going to Democrat led sanctuary cities, especially like Los Angeles, California. Like, I mean, I'll just use blue states like California, New York. I'm not too sure if Pennsylvania is definitely one of them. I'm pretty sure ICE is going after a lot of people where, wherever they are, it doesn't matter if it's a blue or red state. But if you kind of think of it like that, they're basically going after anybody that has not processed themselves coming over to the US, and they'll literally go after anybody if you're not on record where you're getting like your citizenship correctly, and therefore you did not get processed effectively to be naturalized in the US. Then you will get you will be met with your deportation. Now, I will say ICE has been doing some bad things in terms of like going after innocent people that don't really have like a criminal record, but they're kind of just kicking people out for the hell of it. Where what they're doing is like, let's just say, if there's like some 14 to 16-year-old kid at a high school, right? And let's just say he plays soccer, he's a quote unquote immigrant from another country, but ICE decides to go get this kid and send him back to his country where he doesn't have really much family, over in contact at his other country. So he's basically left with the very few, like, I guess, like resources and support that he has with his family in the US, which for the most part, let's just say in the case of, for his family that are quote unquote American, like for the most part, if that kid had already had his family kind of like stick up for him, and he wasn't really kind of being like, appointed with this particular information with having to become a quote unquote, legal citizen, sooner to have his process to be met through, then therefore ICE is going after the wrong individual, just trying to get somebody to be kicked out, because there are plenty of instances where people get sent back to their own country where, let's just say, if they're getting close to getting their citizenship done, ICE will go after those people and they will just kick them out because they haven't, they are quote unquote still illegal. But yet, let's just say if they're getting close to like their court hearing to kind of become a citizen and have that put into place, ICE will just go after that person and say, "Oh, well, no, like we'll just kick you out anyway because, we really don't care and we just want to make an example out of, anybody." And that's my particular problem that I have with ICE. They are abusing their power for the wrong reasons, and they're acting like as if they're the good guys, but they're acting very fascistic. That would be similar to what the Gestapo of the Nazi, party per se, with like the soldiers that have kind of gone out of their way to like ask Jews to be like, hey, where's your papers, blah blah blah. So, I can see why people have a problem with that, but for the most part, if a lot of immigrants are not educated on the law and they're not understanding like what the protocol is of coming over to the US the right way, that's the bigger issue too, because if they're not being educated by their family to be like, okay, hey, look, when you come over to the US and you're trying to get your citizenship started, you have to have everything put together. Like, you can't just come over and just expect everything to kind of be set up for you, through somebody else. You actually have to put your application status in. You also have to make sure that you have like your visa, make sure everything is put together. And if you don't have that, you're basically screwed, because it's like, this is where a lot of immigrants screw up, if they don't choose to even have that visa at all and they're just trying to kind of get their way in. then if they're doing it illegally, like ICE is gonna come after you. I mean, it's just basically what's gonna happen. Like, I get it. Like a lot of guys come from really messed up situations, and I've ran into them. I've ran into people from Lebanon. I ran into people from Syria. I ran into a few people from India, China, Korea. Well, not North Korea, but South Korea. Yeah, I've ran into a lot of people, dude. Like, I've known some people from Africa where they literally tell me like they don't have that opportunity to kind of get that money together where they can kind of afford, like those type of things. But the thing is that where they're coming from, they're trying to like make it out safe because a lot of these people that are coming through a lot of migrant caravan, like caravan units per se, where a lot of people are just coming in through some cartel that's bringing them over there, or at least they're probably having somebody that they're paying to like bring them over there, whether it's by car or let's just say by train. Like, it doesn't really matter. It's just more like these people are taking a massive risk with their family, and it's real sad because it's like a lot of the immigrants, especially, like, I'll just even say like the immigrants that are coming from the Central Americas, from South America, um a little bit from the Caribbean. I mean, it's not always like that, but there's always a case where it's mostly directed with like the Cubans, and then like the Haitians. They're being like they're going out of their way trying to flood all over Florida, but a lot of them are being kicked out by ICE, and they're being hunted down, as we speak. So it's like they're being taken out, but a lot of like the quote unquote labeled immigrants from the Central and South Americas, like Venezuela, Mexico, Guatemala, Nicaragua, some cases maybe Belize, but Belize is probably not that big. um let's just say Honduras, Brazil, Argentina. I mean, there's just a whole bunch of countries. Like, I mean, it's not just those immigrants. I mean, globally, like, there's immigrants from all over the world too, like India, China, parts of Africa, people that come from Ghana, people that come from Nigeria. I mean, I can just go on and on and on. Like, I mean, I've ran into a bunch of immigrants, especially here in New York. But it's like the thing is like if they're trying so hard to like risk their life coming over here to the U.S., what makes you think like these corrupted politicians are not trying to use them as a means to kind of like use them as cannon fodder for livestock, and then just abuse them to say, hey, don't worry, we'll just bring you over here and then we'll just kind of do whatever we want for you. But the cost is that they're going to be caught with, well, they're going to be given a political lie to kind of like be promised all these crazy things, and at the expense of it, it's going to be taxed onto the American, people, where the Americans have to pay for that. And then if a criminal does something psychopathically retarded, who has to pay for that in taxes for that? That's going to be the American citizen, quote unquote. That's not going to be the immigrant that has to bust his tail to go back to his country, and he has to be met with with a criminal charge back in his home, back in his own country. So that's pretty much what the issue with with what people are saying, like ICE is bad and ICE needs to be taken out. But it's like the thing is like think about all the bad immigrants that are coming over to the US, and they're trying so hard to utilize their power for the wrong reasons to have the politicians back them. Because I truly believe like that's kind of like what you see in Western Europe, where a lot of the European nations are trying to use this really weird, crazy communist, socialist type of style of. Oh wait, hold on. All right, I'm back. So yeah, a lot of what the Western European nations have been kind of using a lot of communist-driven, corrupted, open borders level, politics, and they're just doing it so therefore they can destroy their own populations, and it's obviously ran by the EU, and it's evil. It's not promoting anything good. It's promoting one disincentivized degenerate culture where you're bringing in way too many people from way too many different backgrounds, where these people have really messed up cultural beliefs, and they believe that it's okay to violate other people's rights in the event to think that they don't have to be responsible for their crimes, and they can just get away with anything bad that they want to do, especially for the bad immigrants. And therefore, for the good immigrants, they have to deal with the problem of they're being viewed as a bad, person coming over, and therefore they don't really have the proper opportunities to grow, because their opportunities are being looked down upon as if they are the problem, which not in all cases that they are the problem, but in certain discrepancies where immigrants that actually do work harder than most people, and they actually have a good incentive to be a good individual for not the quote unquote society, but just for their local communities, helping people out and being a good neighbor, and actually like being a good being like a good companion for those that they've generated a good relationship with. Like those people are those people should be looked up to as great indicators for societal structure, and those people should not be looked down upon. So I mean, overall, like, that's what a lot of people misconceptually look at immigrants for, where most immigrants don't have a good mindset coming over, and they just think that's what every immigrant thinks, especially mostly like Americans per se, which, like, those are obviously like the more like authoritarian, conservative driven weirdos that like to be like, oh well, not everybody should just come in and everybody should just be viewed as a criminal if you just come in with bad intentions. And it's like, no, that's not really true. It's like people have a life. People don't always think like that, and you have to think about it where it's not a one-to-one match. But the thing is that if a criminal does do wrong and they do something really really stupid in their life, they should own up to it, and they should pay for the crime for what they have done. But then on top of that, with my libertarian side of me that kind of comes in, I am, strictly closed borders. I don't want immigrants coming over. I don't think a lot of people should even be admitted to the U.S. But the thing is that if you work hard and you come from a hardworking family, the people that do deserve to come over to the U.S., they should come over. People that are coming over with bad intentions, they should not come over. And I think ICE does not play a role in stopping all the immigrants that they claim to say that they're stopping. They're only going after people that they're deeming to be bad, which the thing is that a good portion of them are bad. I mean, they're catching a lot of bad immigrants that have criminal records, and once they catch them, with like a felony of a crime that they have committed, they can kick them out, and they don't have any access coming back to the U.S. So I'm totally okay with seeing people gone, but don't create these like little falsified claims to say like, oh well, this 14-year-old little boy needed to be sent back to Honduras because he was never to be processed as a green card immigrant, so therefore he needs to lose his future going to school out in some school in Massachusetts, and therefore he has to go back home with very little resources, and he doesn't know where to go in order to be in contact with his family. So you're already separating children away from their parents or their relatives. So it's like it's already like a raging battle to see proper justice in how families are able to keep themselves together, and what are the protocols in terms of keeping those people together. Because I mean, the thing is that you are putting a massive risk on their financial burden, where they have to basically go through go through a rock and a hard place where they cannot survive, and they have to go through that whole psychopathic process of even trying to leave their. Okay, hold on. All right, I'm back. Yeah, so I'm just gonna finalize to say that a lot of immigrants have to go through that whole psychopathic process of having to, get their finances back on track and to even find a way back to the US after they've gotten their papers and all this, you know, how should I say, all this difficult process of even just making it back over to the US. I mean, for one, it's already expensive as it is. So it's not a guaranteed match for them to make it to the US and to have everything, here effectively in terms of what papers and documentations that they need in order to make it over here safely to the US. So it's already like a risk that they're taking with having to travel from their own country, and then they don't know if they're going to properly survive because these people are walking thousands of miles away from their own country, or probably maybe taking like some little train or some trip to even get over here. But in certain cases where certain immigrants are taking really violent cartel trips over to the US, yeah, that's messed up. That should not happen. A lot of them should not have to suffer like that. If you have a good, if you have a good, clean record, and you have, a good, a good, hardworking profile of you, having, a hard work ethic with a good job, building resume, which, obviously most immigrants don't really, have anything like that. But I'm just saying, like, those hardworking immigrants should come over to the U.S., and the ones that are criminals that are just coming in to freeload off of what the government to give them more rights compared to American citizens that deserve, way more benefits compared to a legal immigrant. Um, yeah, though, those immigrants should be should be shunned away from society, and also welfare state, like the welfare state should be eliminated where they cannot be given those opportunities, and therefore that'll force them to get themselves a job and build skills, and they can't just go out of their way thinking like, oh well, I can just mooch and freeload off of other people and then make social media videos using like a iPhone that the government gave you, where you could be like, ha 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 ha, you Americans suck, I'm able to kind of just live off of other people's money, blah blah blah. So it's like, like that alone is already disgusting and evil. That if you have immigrants that already hate Americans, and it's like you're bringing in people that have bad intentions to be vigilant, like be violent to other people that they don't like, then it's like, no, I don't want those people over. I want those people to suffer, and I don't think those people should ever see a day, day in life, walking in the United States of America. So I mean, that's just how I see it. Let me know what y'all think. So I think overall ICE is not really doing a good job per se. Their actions definitely deserve criticism, and again, it's not a 1-to-1 match, but it's not like ICE is always doing like the bad thing. It's a double-edged sword for sure, but it's like every story is different with what ICE is having to do, and I can't just break every story down and just kind of like explain that in so many hours within a day of like what they have done right and what they have done wrong. So what I will say is that ICE should be held accountable if they do something wrong with having to deport somebody that should not be, they should not be purely deported for any particular reason unless they have their documentation put together of having their visa and all that. So for the most part, I should, basically be put at a certain pedestal where they're not having to kind of utilize their power for the wrong reasons, and therefore that can be adjudicated as properly as possible. So yeah, that's my take. Let me know what you guys think, and I will see you guys later. I got more videos coming out. Peace, and see you. Bye.